Where did the name Liberdade come from?
Because this is actually today a controversial subject.
Oh,
So
really?
the last person that was executed in Liberdade in 20th of September 1821 was known as Francisco das Chagas, a Brazilian black military that
Okay.
was leading a riot against the crown of Portugal for something about 5 years. Okay.
Okay.
He was a military, so he was actually working for Portugal, but he was a Brazilian military. And at that time, there was this, they were there were problems between if you were a Brazilian military, if you were a Portuguese military, because in most cases, if you were a Portuguese military, you had privilege that you wouldn't have if you were a Brazilian military. So
Right.
because these people weren't earning a salary, they were leading this riot, and it was for something about 5 years. When they captured Francisco de Chagas, they executed publicly Francisco de Chagas in the square as a way to demonstrate that you can't lead a riot against the crown of Portugal.
Right.
Brazil is still under Portugal for another year. So in 1821, they killed Francisco de Chagas, and there is a popular story behind that
Yeah.
today is also claimed by Black people of São Paulo
Uh-huh.
that says that during the time of the execution, the rope that they were using for hanging Francisco was breaking several times. And so the
Mm.
population, in order to, they would understand that that was a sign of gods, that wasn't the right thing to do, they would
Right.
scream Liberdade, which means freedom, because they
Mm.
were asking for freedom for Francisco. Okay, so that would
Uh,
be one of the theories behind the name of Liberdade. Okay. Beside, I mean, even if it's a beautiful story, there is actually no historical source of that. So we don't really know if this thing actually happened, population screaming Liberdade. But we know another thing.
okay.
There was a fountain in the square of Liberdade
Uh-huh.
that was built in 1831 called Chafariz da Liberdade, which means in Portuguese the Fountain of Freedom, that
Okay.
was made this fountain in São Paulo to celebrate the abdication of Pedro I for his son Pedro II. Apparently, people didn't really like Pedro I, and so they were happy that he was giving his throne to Pedro II. And
Okay.
when this was happening, they were celebrating this day as a day of freedom. And because of that, they were building a fountain that was known as the Fountain of Freedom. This fountain was located somewhere else in São Paulo, but then at a certain point was moved to the square of São Paulo, to
Oh,
Liberdade.
Liberdade.
It didn't
Okay.
have the name at the time because at the time was known as Largo da Forca, which means the Gallo Square, basically. And so
Oh,
the presence
okay.
of the fountain would be historically, at least, is the only thing that we have a source that we can kind of confirm,
Uh-huh.
origin of the name Liberdade.
Okay.